Welcome to Bright Ideas with Jess Dumig. I am Jess Dumig, and I'm here today with Jonathan Torres. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited to talk to you today about leadership and all the cool things that you're doing. I think it's so important, these messages that we're getting out there from real humans who are in the thick of it. I love it. But so before we jump into that, why don't you go ahead and let everyone know who is Jonathan?
Yeah, well, that could be a very long conversation in of itself, and I don't mean that in a braggadocious way. I mean, I've just been incredibly fortunate my entire life to have experienced a lot of things across a variety of industries, and it's one of these things where I've had just an amazing life. I've been incredibly fortunate, and we'll probably hit on some of the reasons why in this conversation. But I'm a born and raised Floridian from Miami, Florida. Currently residing in Tampa Bay. I've been here since about 2006, so I'm pretty much a Tampa Bay resident now at this point, kind of sealed and dealed. My daughter, who is 5, was born here in Tampa Bay, and I have a 6-year background in radio, and then about a 14 to 15-year background in digital marketing and advertising, as well as traditional. And now I'm about year 2 into being an entrepreneur. And so life, as it is for most of us who are millennials and Gen Xers, and it's life is an ever-changing thing. I think, contrary to maybe previous generations, but nonetheless, it's been an exciting one. And again, we're going to probably touch on a lot of those things that I'm excited to kind of revisit. As to kind of the path to how we got here.
Oh yeah, and we will indeed. So I want to jump right in. Thank you for giving us your bio, but talk to me about, you have this phrase, the riches are in the niches. I don't think it's yours,
Yeah.
but you use it a lot. Tell me about what does that mean? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in just about every industry, there are opportunities in kind of the pockets of a market segments that, again, not everybody's playing in. And so, again, it's the reason why like mom and pop pizza shops are still able to exist in the world of Domino's and Pizza Hut and Little Caesars and so on. When it comes to services, you have, especially I've been in the event industry for almost 20 years, and you have such a wide range. You have, those events that cost thousands of dollars, and then you have those on the other end, of families that are on a budget who are maybe looking to spend hundreds of dollars when it comes to some of the special moments in their lives. And so, the truth is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really, what is the type of customer that you want to cater to? Real estate is also a great example of that. Do you want to sell luxury homes, or do you want to sell starter homes? Do you want to help families get into their first homes, or do you want to help multimillionaires find, some beachfront condo? And I think as I've gotten older, because when we're young, we're ambitious and we want to make the money and be the star and, make it in whatever industry we're in. We realize, I think more so as adults, that no, there's a lot of great customers. There's a lot of great clients. There's a lot of good you can do servicing a segment of the market that isn't maybe being serviced adequately or at all in some cases. And we're going to touch on some of that, based on where my company's headed. And so, in talking about niches, I'm currently, in the production business, video production, YouTube, podcasts, live streaming, that sort of space. And, I think not to get ahead of us ourselves in this conversation, but in a world where you have Bally Sports now, which used to be Fox Sports, ESPN, you have these giant sports conglomerates. There is a huge void to fill when it comes to lower level, like small colleges and universities, high schools, youth sports. There's tons of activities and sports and games and events happening out there that nobody's covering. I'm pursuing that. I'm going down that road, and I'm finding it to be a very successful one. And it's an area that, again, is just kind of ripe for the taking, especially in an industry like sports, where we know there are billions of dollars to be made.
Right. And it's so interesting because when you talk about finding a niche and some of the smaller, smaller opportunities as a individual maybe, but then when you look at the volume, maybe that industry is even bigger. And it's so hard in today's world where everything says you have to be the biggest, the fastest, you have to make $1 million. If you're not making millions of dollars, you're not doing it right. Do it bigger, do it
Right.
faster, do it everything. And in a way, you're kind of saying, let's flip the script a minute and let's focus on the singles, not the home runs.
Yeah, exactly. And with my company in particular, of course, I'm coming to you from my little studio here in Tampa. But in reality, I really don't want to grow physically, have a physical location that would be much larger than this, because I think for me, strategically, I think there's a lot of value in portability. And there's a lot, if not more, opportunity out there, be it in a live space, be it in a stadium, be it in an arena, be it, in venues. And there's a demand for that. Not everybody wants to do stuff in a studio. And studios are costly, because now you've got overhead, now you have to purchase more equipment, you have to have more staffing, and so it's also understanding that again, not the grass isn't always greener, and I know plenty of amazing companies here locally that have incredible studios. Well, guess what? I don't want to compete with them. Like, that's just not the market. That's not the clientele that I'm going after. And they do amazing work. And I just don't see myself in a position where I want to be in that space, because they already do a great job of filling that space. And I'd rather be the bigger fish in the smaller pond. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And opportunity, hopefully will lead to more financial success and success overall for the company.
Yeah, and you used one word in there that I think you kind of rolled over it, but I know that when I started this podcast and this speaker series, I really wanted to touch on the stuff they don't tell you in these books that everybody's reading or these nationally acclaimed whatever podcasts, hopefully we get there,
Hmm.
whatever. But bottom line is there is no silver bullet, right? There is no one way for every single person to do the same exact thing. And what you said
Right.
is strategically for you. That's a big deal. That's the
Yeah.
part that I feel is left out of all of these teachings, all of the Bransons, the Sandbergs, the Vaynerchuks, all the Robins, all these guys and girls and women and men, whatever, are like, just do this. And then I just push through and it's like, oh, okay, thank you. But what works for Jonathan does not work for Jessica. Maybe parts of
Exactly.
it do, but from a
Mhm.
strategic standpoint, no one ever talks about that in those books. They never say you
No.
have to figure out what you want and how
Mhm.
what you're going to do is going to get you there.
And oftentimes we perceive that the formula, that the general formula that's out there is the only way to succeed or the only way to get started. When in reality, again, it's not. I have a friend who, again, he's practically my mentor. Actually, we used to work for him, but he was really the one who planted the seed for me to go in the direction I'm going in now. He had a business partner. He had an investor, who gave him a lot of money to help him build his agency to what it is today. And he's very successful. And I'm incredibly excited and happy for him. But again, I don't have those resources. I don't have those connections. I don't really want other people's money, because that means you're also having to give up part of your company or part of your control. And not, again, you have to go through that whole discovery process of, well, does this person share the vision that I have for the company? And so I've literally started the company from, what was, again, a kind of a temporary setback in life, and was able to get some starter money that came to me as a result of it, and I've been doing it that way ever since. I haven't borrowed a single dollar, not from a relative, not from a friend, and are there times where it would make it a lot easier if I had somebody to lean on financially to buy more equipment or hire more people? Absolutely. But again, at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And if you can build it yourself, I mean, go for it. Now, if you feel that you need that extra person, whether it would be for their expertise or whether it be for their resources, then that's okay as well. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And so I think some people get hung up on, well, I don't have investors, I don't have the startup funds, I don't have, and the truth of the matter is that you can get started with what you have, especially nowadays. Not to go down a Gary Vee tangent, but again, it never in the history of this planet has it been easier to be an entrepreneur, because we are empowered more than ever with the resources and the technology that we need to get started. And it's pretty much all on your phone, as he says. And you can literally start a company, a profitable company, from your phone. And if that's not motivation enough, then you're not motivated to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and you make a very clear distinction between an entrepreneur and a freelancer. And I think
Mhm.
that even just when we first talked about this, it really struck a chord with me. And I'd really like, if you don't mind, to kind of walk us through that, because it's it's counterintuitive, but it's so intuitive. Like, until you think about it and you sit here and you're like, well, wait a minute, so to just hear it, it's like, actually those are like the same thing. And it's like, well, no, it's
Yeah.
not. So walk us through that.
Yeah, and I won't take credit for the idea, but I'll certainly kind of elaborate on how, again, it illuminated, my personal situation. Shortly after the housing crash, like many people, I was laid off, but there were still companies and businesses that needed the services that I could provide in terms of marketing and advertising and graphic design and social media management, that sort of thing. And so I started doing those things because some of the very people that I used to work with still needed my services, even though I was no longer with the company. And so many of my former coworkers and even my own former boss said, "Hey, can we hire you freelance? Can we hire you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great. Like, I'll start this business where I'm doing social media and digital marketing and advertising and graphic design and all this kind of stuff, and I'll kind of start this business." And in my mind, I thought I was kind of starting my own business, and man, what could this possibly turn into? But one day I came across a Seth Godin podcast, and what he says is that you have to realize, you have to make the decision at some point in your journey: are you the entrepreneur or are you the freelancer? And I thought I was the entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They think, oh, I'm an entrepreneur because I'm doing this work and I have these clients. But in reality, if you are the only person doing the work, and you are not able to go after the business and grow the business without you also doing the business, then are you really the entrepreneur or are you simply a freelancer? And that's when I realized, that was the eye-opening experience, that I realized, okay, I'm not an entrepreneur. I know, wow, like I'm the freelancer because I'm doing all the work. And if you're doing all the work, you can't grow the business. And if you're not growing the business, then you're not an entrepreneur. And that's the distinction between the two. And so I've been very mindful, while in the early stages of this company, I'm still doing a bulk of the work, but I now have people that I can lean on. If I can't do a particular event, I can bring them in and not have to physically be there. And that's the difference. The company can move on without me. And that's the difference between being the freelancer and the entrepreneur. Because I can go out and grow the business and have other people do the work. If you're the one doing the work, it is really hard to go out there and grow the business, because your bandwidth becomes very, very narrow, and it becomes really hard to do the work and grow the business. At some point, you max out. You either have way too many clients and way too much work on the table, or you don't have enough work, and so it just becomes an equation that it doesn't work out if you're the freelancer, because there's a limit to your time. And so I have a lot of friends that I admire, and I think the world of them, that are out there doing various things. But they've never been able to grow the company, or have chosen not to grow the company beyond themselves. And so again, like, is that a company? or are they simply a freelancer? Are they simply, an outsourced marketing person for their clients? And that's the distinction. And not that there's anything wrong with either one of those. Because if you just want to be the freelancer and you just want to service a limited number of clients, you can still make a great amount of money doing it. But that's not necessarily entrepreneurship. Again, I think entrepreneurship comes at the point where you're having to grow the business in terms of staff, in terms of equipment, in terms of projects beyond oneself. And again, that's where, I'm sure we're going to touch on self-discovery, but that I think is part of the process that needs to take place. You need to figure out early on, do you want to be the entrepreneur or do you want to be the freelancer? And again, I don't think there's a wrong answer there. You just have to figure out which one of those is the right answer for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's definitely not anything wrong with either one. But when you start talking to others in the space at a higher level, a more strategic level, you really need to be clear on the terminology that you're using, because it can really kill your credibility very easily if you're sitting here thinking you're one thing when you're really another. And that's not to say that a freelancer can't have an entrepreneurial spirit or whatever.
Right.
That's not to say that every single person wants to grow a company. And that's totally fine. But one thing that you touched on, and this will go into the self-discovery thing, it's a perfect segue. I think there is something to be said about a freelancer turned entrepreneur, right? Because at some point, especially when you're bootstrapping your company and it's all yours, you don't have the investors for by design or by lack of resource or whatever, you have to understand your business and the ins and outs of it. I've seen too many people are like, I'm going to start a business, and they're like, marketing. I don't know anything about marketing, but I want a marketing company. Or I've never done graphic design in my life, but that's ugly. It's like, really? I mean, you have to find what you're going full circle, what your niche is, and then what that becomes, what it looks like at a strategic level. Do you only ever want to be, I say only, it's probably not even fair to say that, but do you want to be a freelance gig worker? That's cool because it gives you a lot of freedom, but it comes down to self-discovery, knowing yourself well enough to say, what is it that you actually want? Not what is society telling you, not what are your friends telling you, not what are the fake avatars on Instagram telling you, but what is it that you actually want? Freedom, financial, whatever. So talk us through yours. I mean, I'm seeing a trend that there's this elder millennial Gen X, I guess Gen X.
I'm a millennial. I'm right on the line. I came in right at the beginning. I'm 1980.
Me too. So we're elder millennials, which are geriatric millennials, which makes fun of vomit. I've said that many a time.
Oh my God. Well, when you're 3 years away from Tom Brady, and everybody keeps calling him the oldest player in the NFL, you're like, oh, that hurts.
Yeah, until you watch him beat the Cowboys and carve up their defense, and you're like, I'm okay with that. It doesn't seem to bother him.
No.
But I'm realizing there's this kind of inflection point in our lives where we're like, we've worked like we were told. We went to high school, we went to college, we got the job, we got the other job, we got the next job, we got up, fast. And we're like, what the hell are we doing? We're miserable, we're not healthy, we're burnt out. And it's like, hello, wake up. What are we doing?
Sure.
And I'd love to see that inflection point go younger, because I feel you give me your thoughts, but I feel like I wasted a lot of my time doing stuff I didn't want to do. Now we can scapegoat it as, well, we paid our dues, or we found out what we didn't like, because that's as much important as what we do like. And we've honed our management style and our leadership paradigms. And great, cool story, bro. Why are we in therapy? Like, well,
and look, and we've seen, even again, some of the giants out there, of industry, we've seen CEOs at every level, who make mistakes. And they're going to always make mistakes. I mean, you're never going to have it fully figured out. And I think that works on both ends of the spectrum. Whether you are, the Fortune 500 company CEO, or whether you're the entrepreneur who Maybe you're right out of college, maybe you're right out of your first or second job, okay, but you're never going to have it fully figured out. And it's kind of like one of those things where, and I'll kind of relate it to, being a parent. You're never fully ready to take it on. And it's almost like the younger you are, like the less you realize that you don't know what you don't know. And so you're okay to you're giving yourself more room to make those mistakes. And you don't even realize, the mistakes that you are making, right? And the learning process is a lot easier when you're younger, especially when you don't have the commitments that you do as you get older. Be it financial commitments because you now are accustomed to a certain lifestyle, or maybe you've started a family, maybe you have children. All of those things start to pile up and start to make it harder, to really make that jump into entrepreneurship. And so, to your point, I think really it all starts with the self-discovery process. And you and I have, talking before today, we kind of realized that it's the one thing that nobody talks about, in the entrepreneurial journey is that self-discovery process. And if we could get more people who have an entrepreneurial streak to them, who have that drive to become an entrepreneur, start that self-discovery process at a younger age, I think we'd see a lot more younger entrepreneurs. And in some ways, like we do now with, especially in the tech sector, I think, you're starting to see, because we've been empowered by technology, you obviously see that the average age of entrepreneurship has probably shifted drastically, down. But I think, again, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay too. That's expected.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, we say necessity breeds innovation. I think that happens in failure too. And I know
Oh yeah.
We've talked at length about failure and how important failure is in the process. I want to get into that for sure, but I do want to talk about this quote from Steve Jobs. Find the lazy guy. Right. He'll always find the most efficient way to complete a task. And
Yeah.
you have some great stories with this one. You've told me about selling candy in school and
Sure.
Just finding the most efficient ways to do things and really the most efficient ways to get to the final. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Right.
Tell us about 7-year-old Johnny in elementary school and his mother, who was quite the supporter.
Yeah, my parents, fiscally conservative. They always, said that you had to earn for the things that you wanted, and they pushed that on me very early on. Again, as early as elementary school. And so if I wanted the latest video game or toys or, comic books or whatever it was, I had to work for it. I had to earn it, either through chores or through allowance or through, making my own money. And so I don't remember the initial kind of inception of the idea to sell candy, but it's a very common thread. And so my mom, we were early adopters of the wholesale clubs, and we would go to one of the wholesale clubs in our community, and she would buy the candy in bulk. So she'd front me. She was kind of like my investor. And then I would take the product and I'd take it to school and I'd sell the candy at school. And again, you have your trial and errors. You learn really quick. You don't bring chocolate because it melts, especially in Florida. And you also, you got to talk to the customer. You got to find out what it is they like. Do they like Twizzlers? Do they like Sour Heads? Do they like Airheads? Do they prefer gum? And that way you can find out pretty quickly, really, where's the supply and where's the demand. And through that discovery process, you realize where the opportunities to make money is. And also your pricing thresholds, how much is a kid willing to pay for candy? Is it $1? Is it $2? And fortunately, despite the fact that it wasn't allowed in my schools, I think a lot of the teachers saw it as a teaching opportunity. Obviously, they had my parents' blessing for me to do it. And so a lot of them would just say, hey, we see what you're doing. We're okay with what you're doing, but just don't do it during class. Don't let it be a distraction. And that was exciting for me because it was kind of a validation that, okay, there must be something good or right about what I'm doing here. So I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit about myself, and my mom and my dad, have always had it in them. And it taught me a lot about just the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship, and trying to find that customer base, and knowing, when, okay, if there's some other kid that's selling the same candy as you are, well, then sell something different.
You're taking a master
And you don't.
class in accounting and economics before you even hit middle school.
Exactly. It really is. And you also realize that you don't have to compete in the same space. Going back to, what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, if you've got one kid that's selling bubble gum, well, don't sell bubble gum, sell something else. And that way there's room for everybody, to make money. And that goes back to my philosophy on, the reason and the way that I started my business and the niche that I'm trying to fill in the way that I do my production. And so getting to the quote that you were talking about from Steve Jobs, funny enough, I would say laziness is maybe at the core of my company. It's maybe at the core of my business because in all the things that I've been fortunate to do in my career, what I realized that I didn't really enjoy was the post-production process. I love production. I love doing stuff like this. What I didn't like was then having to sit at my computer for another 4, 6, 8 hours, having to do all the editing for it. And again, this goes back to self-discovery. So I realized that if I wanted to be in the production business, I had to figure out a way to find a niche for myself where I was also not going to lock myself into doing a lot of post-production, which I don't like, because it wasn't even, could I go out there and find an editor, somebody that loves to sit in front of a computer and chop up video all day? Absolutely. But again, that now becomes an obstacle to the services that I want to provide, because now I either have to do that myself until I can hire somebody, or I have to hire somebody and make sure that I have enough business, to be able to compensate that person. And now I'm sharing part of my revenue, to provide those services for my clients. And so I decided to at almost every opportunity, try to eliminate the post-production process. And that's why I love live streaming. When you go to do an event or sporting event or any kind of a live streaming event, it's all live, it's television, and it's in real time, the graphics, the audio. And part of, the excitement is that, yeah, you know what? Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes equipment doesn't work. Sometimes, there's a curveball. It starts raining, or there's unexpected things that happen when you're doing live production, and that's part of the excitement that I enjoy about it. And even in the way that I do my traditional video production, I shoot chronologically, anything to reduce the amount of time that I have to spend in post-production. But when it comes to producing my podcasts or YouTube videos, and certainly my live streaming events, it's all done in real time. And has essentially eliminated any post-production almost entirely. And that's why I said, laziness is kind of at the core of my business, because it's a task that I early on decided I didn't really care for. And there's some projects I'll make the exception for, but for the most part, it's just not a service I provide, and it has not hampered my business whatsoever. It has not lost me a client. It has not caused me any issues. And again, I'll make the exceptions where I'm comfortable making them. But for the most part, again, I think people understand, okay, this is just the way you do business. And so far, again, it hasn't shown to be a detriment to my business in any way. And so in turn, that laziness, has really turned out to be something that has been more of a positive for my business, because you have to make sure you get it right in real time. You
Right.
know, if you're not going to do the post production, then you better make sure you get it right when you're doing it live.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's very interesting, your story, because you say laziness, everyone's like, "Oh, lazy, that's a terrible word." But
Yeah.
then that laziness and your adaptation into live production, for lack of more TV than movie, um,
Hmm.
happened
Oh
what,
yeah,
2 months before COVID?
yeah. That's a, you know, it's a line that I love to use to explain to people, you know, really kind of how my company does what it does. You know, what traditional videography and production companies do is more like film. You know, you shoot tons of video and you get tons of audio, and then you have to sit there for hours on end putting it all together like a jigsaw puzzle. And it's a beautiful process. I mean, I did radio production for 6 years. I do enjoy some of the production process. There is something very rewarding about like any craft. You know, spending hours on something and then seeing the end result is an incredibly rewarding process, but it's very time consuming. And I would rather make more product in a shorter time frame, which in turn gives me more revenue, rather than again having to compete in an already somewhat crowded space, and spend a lot of time, and hence reducing my revenue, or having to raise my prices. You know, because you have to do one or the other.
Right.
Um, and so that's why, you know, I tell people, you know, what typical video production companies do is film. What I do is television, and I think that's a great way to kind of summarize the kind of process, you know, that I take on my projects. You know, and that being said, you know, I'll kind of boil it down to something even simpler. Um, through again, you know, going through the tough times and the housing crash, and you know, and when I didn't have an agency that I could hire, I didn't have a graphic designer I could hire. I had to learn graphic design. And look, I love Photoshop, I love Illustrator, I love again the creative process of designing and graphic design. And I'm not a graphic designer by any means, but I would much rather get those things done in a timely, more efficient manner so that then I can move on to the next thing that's going to make me more money. And so that's why like Canva to me is maybe the best tool that's been created on the internet maybe in the past decade, because it is incredibly versatile in terms of doing what you needed to do. And it's free or incredibly efficient. You know, it's relatively inexpensive. And yeah, I probably spend more time on Canva, just knocking things out, than I do probably any other piece of software. But it's incredibly efficient, and it's all the templates and the tools and everything they give you are so professional, that the average person, you got to remember, the average person really can't tell the difference most times.
Yeah.
And not everything has to look like it came out of a Hollywood studio.
Right.
You know, some people are just looking for a different quality of product, and that's okay. You know, it does not everything has to be thousands of dollars, because again, there are small and medium businesses that can't afford to spend $5,000 on a 60-second commercial. So again, going back to the riches are in the niches. You know, there needs to be people that service these small and medium businesses, because they need these services too to be competitive with their larger competitors. And so there's something incredibly rewarding to work with these small businesses that are going up against these bigger players and seeing them succeed as well.
Yeah, and you know, it's so obvious to me, and hopefully to everyone watching, that when you talk, you're so passionate about what you do, right? You believe what you're saying. You're not giving us some line of bullshit. You've obviously gone through this self-discovery. You've obviously found your passion. You've said that, and that's great. But let's step away from the books. What are your three things? Like, for someone who's watching this, if we want to speed up this process of self-discovery, or at least not even speed it up, but move it in our lifeline, our timeline. What are the three things that you would maybe say to someone when they're like, all right, cool, I need a passion. How do I find that?
I think, you know, the first two to me are very obvious. It's, what do you love to do? What would you do for free? Even if nobody paid you to do it, what are you willing to do for free? And I would start there, based on everything you've done in your life. And again, I've been fortunate where I've been able to do a lot of things. But even if you haven't, take a look into, what have you done with your life? Where do you have expertise or experience? And of all of those things that you've done, what do you love to do the most? And then I would counteract that with, what do you hate to do? What's the one thing that you really can't stand? At one point for me, that was sales. Like like most people, I had kind of a negative reaction to the word sales, and people would tell me constantly, oh, you'd be great at sales. You'd be awesome. You'd make so much money. You should get into sales. And I never quite understood why, until I realized that the only reason that I had an aversion to quote unquote sales was rejection. It was overcoming my fear of rejection. And when you're a salesperson, you are going to get a lot of rejection. But once you start to study the sales process, you realize that every no gets you closer to a yes. And so really it's all about getting the no's out of the way. And so when you're becoming an entrepreneur and you're starting to decide what market segment are you going to go after, then start to look and say, where do I think I'm going to get the least amount of no's, especially early on? Where's the most opportunity? And so for me, again, especially in regards to the type of work that I do, when it comes to small and medium businesses, they're the ones that need the most help. They're the ones that don't have thousands of dollars in their budget to hire production companies to come and make videos and commercials for them. Do they want to do all that stuff? Absolutely. And guess what? Some of my clients will hire me and they'll pay, what they're able to pay for one video. And then one video becomes 2 videos, becomes 3 videos, becomes 4 videos, because now they realize, well, they're getting their money's worth. And they realize that now they have access to somebody who's helping them succeed and helping them be competitive in their marketplace. And that's all they want. Your average entrepreneur just wants to be competitive. And especially, again, as a small business owner, there's nothing more rewarding to helping another small business succeed and seeing them do well, because you see the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into it, and you know where that comes from, and you know what it's taken them to get there. And so, I've worked for Fortune 200 companies. And that was a lot of fun, and it was great to kind of have a huge budget and have lots of resources. But I'll tell you, there's something about small business, and mom and pop shops and helping them stay competitive and win in their marketplace that is incredibly rewarding, especially at a time where they're facing more challenges and more competition than they ever have.
Yeah, I love seeing the success come to fruition, right? It's one thing if you're working with a massive brand and you've got 17 commercials in the market and you're A/B testing and you're pulling this from here and this line with this tag and da 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 da, and you're amplifying it on digital, and then you got influencers, and it's like, holy crap, like you can't even figure out what's actually working. But like with the small guys, you have a very targeted market. It's such immediate results. It's either going to be the week after it airs or it's not, right? And that's the beauty of real marketing is you make a commercial or some piece of marketing, you put it out there, you get the returns. That's how marketing's supposed to work. It's not a billion-dollar branding company or branding campaign for Coca-Cola, who's already the #1 carbonated soft drink in the world. That's not what it is, right? We're not trying to keep that position one. You're trying to say, can we make payroll this week, right? Or can we sustain in this market, especially in markets that are competitive, or even more so that aren't that competitive and they're the only one. And so if there's no awareness, they've got nothing, right? So you see the returns immediately. And then it's like, holy crap, this did work. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
And that's the thing, because you are at such a micro level in the market, you can see the tangible results of what you're doing, positive or negative, right? Because you want to make sure that you're monitoring, again, is something working or is it not working? And I'll give you a great example of this. There's an amazing bakery called Moreno Bakery out in Brandon, just outside of Tampa, for those not from Tampa. And they were literally in a tiny little space. And you could barely stand inside of their bakery because it was so small. And they were on the verge of closing. They were literally on the verge of just calling it quits because they were not a great location. Again, they were in a very kind of a crowded area, and just people didn't know they existed, and they just weren't doing well. Well, they scrounged up a little bit of money. They did a commercial on a local cable network that, again, very targeted marketing, because again, the beauty of our technology is that it created the opportunity to do, geographically targeted marketing. And so they picked a zone that covered the area that their business was located in, and their business exploded. It was a last-ditch effort to save their business. It was their Hail Mary, and it paid off. And now they have one of the most popular bakeries in the county. I mean, people drive 20, 30 minutes out of their way just to go there. I mean, but if not for that kind of Hail Mary, that saying, hey, let's try this and hope that it works, they might not be around anymore. And again, going back to, the reward aspect of it. I mean, think about whenever you go to a restaurant or any store or any kind of small business, like there's always like some cool factor being like, oh yeah, I know the owner, or it's like, I know the guy who owns this place, or I know the guy who runs this place. There's something really rewarding about that, because how much work they put into it.
Right.
The hours, the days, the weekends, the holidays, that they put into building that business. And so, you don't have that sense of pride for Coca-Cola, or like you were saying, or Starbucks or Best Buy or anything like that. Because, again, those people are so far in a different, part of the atmosphere, that you'll never see the true impact of patronizing those businesses. But when you do support a small business, again, that you're helping those people, keep their employees, provide for their family, maybe, provide for nonprofits in the area, because, a lot of small businesses donate, a lot of their goods and services to nonprofits. And so I think there's always going to be a place for small business for those reasons. But there really is. I mean, for me, while yes, at a younger point in my life, the allure of working, for these huge companies was obviously very exciting. There's nothing more rewarding than helping someone else's visions and dreams of entrepreneurship succeed.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that also goes back to the a little bit, and just to bring it full circle as we're cutting close on time, it goes back to that self-discovery, right? What makes you tick? What is it that you like? What really electrifies you in your day? Is it a huge paycheck? Fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to get that necessarily playing small ball at the necessarily, right? Of course, there's possibilities, but at the same time, you're never going to get the satisfaction of watching a company go from literally about to close their doors to flourishing when you're only about, I want $1 million per ad. You have to figure out what makes you tick, what does it for you.
Regardless of what that goal is, whether it's money, whether it's just the sheer process of what you do, whether it's the creation of the product that you make, whatever it is that motivates you. Again, if it's not something that you're willing to lose sleep over, lose out on weekends, lose out on holidays, lose out on money, because again, especially early on, there's going to be those struggling aspects, then that's not the thing. What are you willing to put it all on the line for? And I'll use two of the most amazing entrepreneurs as a perfect example, Walt Disney and Elon Musk. So we're talking about two very different generational figures, but their trajectories are almost identical. Walt Disney and Elon Musk have time after time put it all on the line, to succeed, to see their vision succeed. Walt Disney was on the verge of bankruptcy or having to sell the company numerous times. Elon Musk also put it all on the line, his entire fortune, to make SpaceX a reality. He continues to put it all on the line to make Tesla a reality, and to continue to grow that business. And so you, in that self-discovery process, what are you willing to put it all on the line for? Because that's the thing. That's the pixie dust that's going to motivate you to be successful as an entrepreneur. Because as they say, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And to me, being an entrepreneur is the kind of perfect combination of those two things: is doing what you love. So it doesn't seem like work, whether it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then well, I lost my train of thought there, but it's, again, is it something that you'd be willing to do even if nobody was paying you for it?
Right. Yeah. And wow, I think that's a perfect spot to end, because we could go on for hours with this.
Yeah.
We really could. Maybe we should do like something for charity, and we just keep it going the whole time and rotate people in. I'm sure it's been done before.
That'd be fun.
It would be.
Yeah.
All right. So to close out, before we go, I have my high five for you, which is 5 random questions. And then I want you to tell us what you're working on, who should connect with you and why, across the board. But first, the 5 questions. 1, coffee or tea?
Oh, not a big drinker of either, but I love me some café con leche. So, which to me, that's as close as I'll get to coffee.
Fair enough. What is your dream vacation?
That's a tough one. I think I just love travel in general, honestly. I think for me it's not about relaxing. To me, it's about seeing things, experiencing new places. I mean, gosh, even as an adult, the first time I ever got to go snowboarding in Colorado, I mean, good Lord, I just couldn't believe the beauty that I was like, oh my God, like this is in our country. Like, I couldn't believe how amazing like the views were. And I think that, it to me, vacation's not about relaxing. To me, vacation is about experiencing things and seeing new things.
So I give you a plane ticket to leave tomorrow. Where are you going? Anywhere in the world?
If I'm going anywhere in the world tomorrow, I'd probably go to Europe, probably, the UK. I've been to France, been to Germany. I think, either the UK or Greece or Italy. Oh, I love Italian food. So maybe, Italy would definitely be in those top 3. But I think I'd go to Europe first.
Italian food's 10 times better in Italy, by the way, and it's really good here.
Oh,
so just FYI. What professional football team do you cheer for?
Hey, look, fortunately they're in different divisions. So the Miami Dolphins will always have a place in my heart. But again, having been a Tampa Bay resident now for, 15 years. I mean, hey, Super Bowl champs all the way. Going for a repeat here in Tampa Bay under the one and only Tom Brady, man. That man is just unbelievable to watch.
I believe you meant to say Champa Bay.
That's right. Tampa Bay. Heck, the Rays are in first place. I mean, gosh, and that's a whole nother conversation, but nobody's going to the games. But I love baseball, and the Rays are doing phenomenal. The Lightning are unstoppable. So, I mean, there couldn't be a better time to live in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, true. Finish this sentence. Never have I ever. No editing.
Yeah, no, never have I ever done drugs. I think I'm one of the few success stories of the DARE program.
Me too.
I think they, in combination with a few other life experiences, that kind of scared me straight. And so I've never tried any of that stuff. I've never smoked a cigarette. I don't smoke. Again, for our generation, that's unfortunately kind of a common or a rare thing to be able to say that you've never done any kind of drugs. And, I'm proud of it. And now having a 5-year-old, I hope that I can pass that along.
That's awesome. And then finally, pencil or pen?
Ooh, I like pen.
Okay.
I like pen. It's more of a commitment. It's there. It's like, if you mess up, you gotta work around it. I think I like the fact that you can't go back and change it. You're stuck with what you started with, and as a greater kind of philosophical way to look at it. But I think I'd go with a pen.
All right. Well, that was the high five. Tell us
Awesome.
who should connect with you. What are you working on? If someone's going to
Yeah.
connect with you, how should they do it? Let us know.
All right. Well, the name of my company is Falkenburg Productions, which unfortunately I waited till the very end to say that. But, I have some DBAs under my umbrella. I have liveweddings.net. I have the Florida Athletics Network as well. And I'll soon be launching another DBA called livepolitics.net. And so if you are looking to do any kind of live streaming, whether it's a corporate event, a sporting event, a life event, I would love to be a part of it. And I continue to do weddings, which again, with COVID, that has been a lot of fun and a necessity for many brides out there. And it's been great to be able to bring families together virtually from around the world. And then sporting events, of course, are always a lot of fun. And so if you have a sporting event, a league, something that you'd like to broadcast out to the world, I'd love to be a part of that as well. And you can kind of search for any of those names, and they'll kind of all redirect you back to me. But Falkenburg Productions, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook, is probably going to be the best way to find me. And again, as far as an ideal client, anyone who's looking to do either live streaming, YouTube videos, or podcasts. I'd love to work with you and make that a reality.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that all those handles and websites and everything are in the write-up and then also available on screen. I do minor editing. I'm not a video editor by any stretch. If you've watched any of these, you'd know that, of course. But hey, we do it where we can. It's all about the content, not necessarily the back end.
Look, and that's what I tell people all the time. Look at the stuff that goes viral. Typically, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
The quality of some of the stuff that goes viral is just god awful. But it's about the content. It's not about the quality. It's about the quality of the content, not the quality of the production.
Exactly. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on Bright Ideas. This has been awesome. I hope we do this again and talk for another hour.
Yeah, definitely.
I think absolutely. There's so much to talk about. So for now, this has been Bright Ideas. I'm Jess Dumig. This is Jonathan Torres, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.